I built my family's company with my own hands after my father's health failed. Isabella arrived with perfect credentials and a smile that made me forget my usual caution. When she accepted my proposal, I thought I'd found my partner in both life and business. I was wrong. She spent months gathering evidence, forging documents, and planting false records. Then at a board meeting, she revealed her true self. She accused me of stealing from my own company and showed fake proof that I was selling secrets to our competitors. My dying father believed her lies. The board stripped me of everything. As security dragged me out, I saw her take my seat beside my father, that cold smile finally showing her true face. She stole my family fortune and laughed while I lost everything. But she made one mistake. She left me alive. Now, 8 years later, she doesn't know who controls her fate. She'll beg for mercy when she learns the truth. I was working late at Mercer Industries headquarters, reviewing acquisition proposals for tomorrow's board meeting when I heard a knock at my door. 3 generations of my family had built this global powerhouse, and as the sole heir, I was determined to continue our legacy of innovation. My father, Richard Mercer, though battling terminal cancer, still chaired the board and had fully supported my vision for the company's future. "Mr. Mercer, your 10 o'clock is here," my assistant announced. I glanced at my watch with a frown. "I don't have any meetings scheduled this late." "HR sent her up, the new financial consultant. They said you approved the after-hours meeting." Before I could object, a woman stepped into my office. Isabella Reyes carried herself with the confidence of someone who belonged in any room she entered. Her credentials were impeccable. Harvard MBA, stellar recommendations from Goldman Sachs. But something about her seemed too polished, too perfect. "I apologize for the late hour, Mr. Mercer," she said, extending her hand. "I wanted to review your Southeast Asian manufacturing proposal before tomorrow's presentation." I was immediately skeptical. "And how did you get access to that proposal?" She smiled. "Your father shared it. He thought I might provide valuable insight." That was unexpected. My father rarely trusted newcomers with sensitive information. During our impromptu strategy session, my doubts began to fade. She dissected my expansion plans with surgical precision, identifying weaknesses I hadn't considered and offering elegant solutions. "Your manufacturing proposal is brilliant," she told me. "But have you considered the currency hedging implications?" She proceeded to outline a sophisticated financial structure that would protect us from regional market volatility. I studied her as she spoke, trying to reconcile her youth with her evident expertise. "Where did you learn to think like this?" "The same place you did," she replied, watching patterns others miss. Over the next 6 months, Isabella became indispensable. She worked alongside me daily, her mind seemingly perfectly aligned with my vision. When she identified inefficiencies in our supply chain that had gone unnoticed for years, the board was impressed enough to grant her expanded access to company records. My CFO, Marcus Reynolds, approached me privately after a particularly successful presentation. "She's remarkably insightful for someone who's only been here a few months," he said carefully, almost as if she already knew our systems intimately. I dismissed his concern. "She's brilliant, Marcus, that's why we hired her." Brilliance doesn't explain how she knew about the Singapore tax structure we implemented 7 years ago. Those records aren't in the shared database. I frowned. "What are you suggesting?" "Nothing concrete, just keep your eyes open." I should have listened more carefully. Our professional relationship evolved into something personal. I found myself drawn to her intellect, her ambition that mirrored my own. When we began dating, it felt like a natural progression. She understood my world completely, the pressure of legacy, the isolation of leadership, the constant need to prove myself. At my family estate, I introduced Isabella to my dying father. Richard studied her with evaluating eyes before nodding slightly. "She understands our world," he told me later. "Keep her close." I didn't see the private conversation between Isabella and my father afterward. Their quiet exchange of knowing glances, the subtle nod of mutual understanding. I was too blinded by what I thought was happening, finding a partner who finally understood me. The night I proposed, I'd arranged for a private dinner in my office overlooking the city lights. The same office my grandfather had used to build Mercer Industries from nothing. The same office where my father had expanded it into international markets. The place where our family legacy lived. "This company is my life," I told her as I knelt. "And I want you to be part of that life completely." Her tears seemed genuine as she whispered, "Yes." It felt like the final piece of my future falling into place. What I didn't see was how she silently photographed my private files after I fell asleep that night, or how she forwarded key documents to an encrypted email address. I introduced Isabella to my childhood friend Catherine, who ran our R&D division. Catherine's reservation was immediate, but subtle, a slight stiffness in her smile, careful observation of Isabella's questions about proprietary technology. Later, Catherine voiced her concerns. "She asks very specific questions about our financial structure, Alex. Things beyond her role's scope." I laughed it off. "She's going to be my wife, Kat. There are no secrets between us." That's exactly what worries me. Isabella's integration into the company accelerated. She suggested restructuring the financial reporting system for efficiency, gaining direct access to accounts previously requiring multiple authorizations. When Marcus objected in a board meeting, Isabella presented a compelling case for streamlining operations that even he couldn't logically refute. "The redundancies built into our system were designed for a different era," she explained to the board. "In today's fast-moving markets, we need agility." My father nodded his approval. "Alexander has always trusted your judgment, Isabella. I'm inclined to do the same." The morning of the critical board meeting, I reviewed the quarterly reports with satisfaction. Mercer Industries had never been stronger, and with Isabella by my side, my vision for expansion seemed unstoppable. I entered the boardroom to find my father already seated, looking grave. Board members avoided my eyes. Isabella sat beside my father, her expression solemn. "Alexander," Richard began, "serious allegations have come to light." Isabella stood, distributing documents to each board member. "I've uncovered evidence of systematic embezzlement," she announced clinically. "Funds diverted to offshore accounts, falsified reports, unauthorized transactions." She displayed financial records with my signature, email correspondence discussing alternative accounting, meeting notes in my handwriting detailing plans to restructure assets before the old man dies. "These are forgeries," I protested, but Isabella had been thorough. The signatures matched perfectly. The emails came from my account. The handwriting withstood initial scrutiny. Richard Mercer stared at me, devastation and disgust warring in his expression. "My own son," he whispered. "How could you?" Before I could mount a defense, Isabella revealed her final card. Blackwood Corporation contacted me 3 weeks ago. They were approached by Alexander offering to sell proprietary technology in exchange for a position in their organization after Richard's death. The betrayal was comprehensive. The board voted unanimously to remove me, strip my shares, and pursue criminal charges. As security escorted me from the building, Isabella caught my eye. The mask slipped for just a moment, enough for me to see cold triumph in her gaze before professional sympathy replaced it. My last vision was Isabella taking the seat beside my father, her hand covering Richard's trembling one, her voice steady as she outlined emergency stabilization measures for the company. "We'll ensure the Mercer legacy continues," she assured him, "despite this unfortunate development." I was thrown out of the building with nothing but my wallet and phone. The company I'd been born to lead, the legacy I'd spent my life preparing to extend, stolen by a woman who had meticulously dismantled my life while pretending to love me. In that moment, standing on the sidewalk outside Mercer Tower, I made a silent vow. This was not the end. It was merely the beginning of a new chapter. One, where Isabella Reyes would learn exactly who she had underestimated. I avoided prison through legal technicalities and lack of conclusive evidence, but my reputation lay in ruins. Financial assets connected to Mercer Industries were frozen. Former colleagues avoided my calls. My father died believing I had betrayed him. The funeral held while I was barred from attending. In a sparse apartment paid for with the only assets Isabella couldn't reach, gold coins my grandfather had given me as a child, kept in a personal safe, I began reconstructing every interaction with Isabella. Not in grief or rage, but with cold analytical precision. I created a timeline on my wall: Isabella's arrival, her questions, her access points, the information she had gathered. Patterns emerged. Her betrayal wasn't impulsive. It was meticulously planned from before she ever walked into Mercer Industries. The business news channels became my constant companion. Isabella's promotion to CFO after Marcus resigned in protest. Catherine's dismissal for corporate restructuring reasons. Blackwood Corporation's announcement of new partnership initiatives with Mercer Industries. She's moving faster than I expected, I murmured to the empty room, adding another note to my timeline. My plan formed methodically. First, I needed to become someone else. Alexander Mercer, privileged, heir and disgraced executive, could never move freely in the financial world again. I needed a new identity, not just documents, but a complete transformation. I began with physical changes. Weight training reshaped my body, adding muscle where there had been none. A discreet cosmetic surgeon altered my features subtly, but effectively. Nothing dramatic, just enough that former associates wouldn't immediately recognize me. Voice coaching eliminated my distinctive speech patterns. I grew a beard, changed my hair color, adopted contacts that altered my eye color. The privileged heir Alexander Mercer disappeared. In his place emerged James Harrington, a self-made investor with a mysterious background. Using the limited funds Isabella couldn't access, I created my first shell corporation. The key was building a business identity that could withstand scrutiny, legitimate operations, proper documentation, believable history. I started small, focusing on tech startups outside Mercer Industries' immediate sphere. 6 months into my transformation, I contacted Marcus. We met in an anonymous hotel room, his shock at my appearance quickly replaced by grim satisfaction. "I knew you weren't guilty," he said. I tried to tell the board, but Isabella had them completely convinced. What happened after I left? She moved quickly, consolidated power, pushed out anyone who questioned the narrative. Your father believed her completely until the end. I absorbed this without visible reaction. And now? She's expanded aggressively, leveraging company assets for rapid growth. The board loves the quarterly returns, but the debt structure is precarious. She's building an empire on sand, I noted. Marcus nodded. One market disruption could bring it all down. Then will be the earthquake. With Marcus providing intelligence from inside the financial world, I next approached Catherine. She had established a small research firm after her dismissal, struggling but surviving. I always knew you'd come back, she said when I revealed myself. Though I hardly recognized you. That's the point. I need your expertise, Kat, not just your knowledge of Mercer technology, but your mind. Together, we formed the core of my revenge strategy. Rather than direct confrontation, I would create a web of control around Mercer Industries. Each acquisition seemingly random, but actually targeting a critical node in their supply chain. Each investment apparently unrelated, but positioned to apply pressure at precisely the right moment. It's not enough to hurt her, I explained to them. I want her to understand completely what she did. I want her to face the same helplessness she inflicted on me. 5 years passed. My network expanded silently. My new identity gained credibility in financial circles without drawing unwanted attention. Harrington Ventures became known for strategics, acquisitions, and savvy investments, but remained private enough that Isabella, now CEO after Richard's death, never made the connection. She continued her aggressive expansion, unaware of the noose tightening around her corporate throat. Through Marcus and Catherine's networks, I monitored every Mercer Industries decision. Each aggressive expansion created new vulnerabilities I quietly exploited. Each competitor Isabella crushed became my ally. She built her empire taller while I undermined its foundation. Isabella's weakness became clear: pathological need for control. She eliminated dissent ruthlessly, made enemies unnecessarily, took risks to dominate markets rather than simply succeeding in them. She married and divorced one of the board members who had supported her coup, gaining his shares in the settlement. She never knew that his sudden financial difficulties afterward were engineered by my shell companies calling in loans at strategic moments. Through Catherine's R&D firm, I developed proprietary technology, innovations Mercer would eventually need to remain competitive. I positioned shell companies as critical suppliers while hiding their connection to me. Through offshore accounts and proxy investors, I gradually acquired control of 40% of Mercer's supply chain. "She's overextended," Marcus reported during our secure quarterly meeting. "Their debt-to-equity ratio is unsustainable. One major market disruption would force refinancing." "And if refinancing became impossible?" I asked. "Immediate liquidity. Crisis. They'd need to find alternative suppliers or face shutdown within 72 hours. I smiled. "Excellent." I cultivated relationships with banking executives, not bribes, information, evidence of Isabella's questionable practices, regulatory concerns, potential stability issues, seeds of doubt, planted systematically. 8 years after my expulsion, I completed my preparation. The trap was set. Market indicators suggested economic volatility ahead. I accelerated the final phase, consolidating control of all alternative suppliers Mercer might turn to in crisis. At precisely the right moment, I arranged for financial journalists to question Mercer Industries' debt structure. Minor concerns at first, growing gradually. Isabella responded with characteristic aggression, dismissing analysts' warnings as competitor-driven propaganda. The board, accustomed to her delivering results, backed her publicly. The foundation continued to crumble beneath an edifice that appeared stronger than ever. I watched from my office as financial channels reported Mercer Industries' latest expansion, a bold move into emerging markets that analysts praised as visionary. Only I knew that this final overreach had stretched their financial resources beyond recovery. "Sir," my assistant said, entering with a report, "the Singapore markets are showing early signs of instability. Our models indicate a 30% chance of cascading effects within the week. Increase our cash reserves," I instructed, "and confirm our positions in all Mercer-adjacent holdings." The waiting was almost over. After 8 years of methodical planning, the culmination of my strategy was finally at hand. Isabella would soon discover that her triumph had always been temporary. The company she had stolen would slip through her fingers, and she would understand exactly who had engineered her downfall. Not with theatrical confrontation, not with public accusations, but with the same methodical, invisible dismantling she had used against me. The perfect symmetry of justice executed with precision. I stared at the financial models projecting market trends for the coming week. All indicators pointed toward the volatility I had been waiting for. The economic environment was primed for the very specific pressure points I had cultivated for nearly a decade. It was time to complete what Isabella had started the day she walked into my office with her perfect credentials and calculating smile. Time to reclaim what was mine while ensuring she understood the full measure of her miscalculation. The board meeting that had changed my life had taken less than an hour. Isabella's downfall would unfold just as efficiently, the result of years of invisible architecture designed for one perfect moment of collapse. The global market crash began unexpectedly. A defaulted loan in Singapore cascaded into widespread investor panic. Overextended companies faced immediate pressure to secure liquidity. From my office in the Harrington Ventures Tower, I watched financial markets bleed red across every screen. "Singapore index down 12% and falling," my assistant reported. "European markets opening with heavy losses. Liquidity freezing across Asia." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "And Mercer Industries?" "Stock down 22% in pre-market trading. Trading halts likely within the hour. 8 years of preparation crystallized into this perfect moment. The economic tsunami I had anticipated, though not created, would expose the structural weaknesses I had carefully documented in Mercer's financial architecture. "Sir," my assistant continued, "we're receiving urgent meeting requests from 3 major financial institutions regarding their Mercer Industries exposure. Decline politely. Suggest they contact Mercer directly." I knew exactly what was happening inside Mercer Tower at this moment. Isabella, leveraged to her limits by her expansion strategy, would be approaching their traditional banking partners with confidence that bordered on arrogance. All doors would close. The first bank would cite risk reassessment protocols. The second would mention exposure concerns. The third would simply decline without explanation. By the fourth refusal, Isabella's confidence would waver. By the sixth panic would set in. I had spent years cultivating relationships with these institutions not through bribes or threats, but by systematically documenting the risk patterns in Mercer's business model. Each bank had independently reached the same conclusion. Mercer Industries represented an unacceptable default risk in a volatile market. By mid-afternoon, Marcus called from his position at a rival financial firm. Emergency board meeting convened. At Mercer, Isabella is facing open rebellion for the first time since she took control. Who's leading the opposition? Westfield. He's demanding immediate solutions to their liquidity crisis. I allowed myself a small smile. Bradford Westfield had been one of the board members who had most enthusiastically supported my removal. Now he would be instrumental in Isabella's downfall. What options is she presenting? That's just it, Marcus said. She has none. Every alternative supplier is suddenly unavailable or quoting impossible terms. Every potential investor has prior commitments. The board gave her 72 hours to secure refinancing or face removal, exactly as planned. Every escape route blocked. Every contingency accounted for. The board that had once embraced Isabella's vision was now witnessing the consequences of her overreach. "Keep me informed," I told Marcus, "especially if she begins exploring connections between her suddenly limited options." I hung up and turned to the window, looking out over the financial district. Somewhere out there, Isabella was experiencing the first taste of the helplessness she had once inflicted on me. The sensation of control slipping away, of realizing that forces beyond her understanding were shaping her fate. By the next morning, Catherine reported from her sources inside Mercer's R&D division. They're working around the clock trying to find alternative supply chains. Every road leads nowhere. How is Isabella handling it? Not well. She threw a tablet at her assistant when he reported the 7th bank refusal. Isabella's composure had always been part of her weaponry. Cool calculation masked as professional poise. That she was losing control so visibly indicated just how desperate the situation had become. By the afternoon of the second day, my assistant entered with the news I had been waiting for. "Sir, Mercer Industries is requesting an urgent meeting. Their representative says it concerns potential acquisition opportunities." "Who's the representative?" "Isabella Reyes herself, sir." I kept my expression impassive. "Schedule it for tomorrow morning, the full 72 hours from when their board delivered their ultimatum." "That's cutting it extremely close for them, sir." "I'm aware." The timing was deliberate. I wanted Isabella to enter my office with the clock nearly expired on her career, her confidence shattered, her options exhausted. I wanted her to understand completely the position of weakness before she recognized who held the power. That evening, I reviewed the final details of my plan with Marcus and Catherine, who came to my penthouse for a secure briefing. "The board members are all confirmed for remote attendance?" I asked. Catherine nodded. "The secure link is established. They believe it's to witness potential investment negotiations." "And the regulatory authorities?" "On standby," Marcus confirmed. "They've reviewed the evidence package. Once they have Isabella's confession, they're prepared to move immediately." Everything was in place. The culmination of 8 years of methodical planning would unfold in my office tomorrow morning. Not with dramatic confrontation, but with the mechanical precision of a trap closing on its prey. I slept soundly that night for the first time in years. The next morning I dressed with deliberate care, choosing a suit that subtly echoed the one I had worn the day of my expulsion from Mercer Industries. Nothing obvious, just enough that the association might register subconsciously in Isabella's mind once she recognized me. I entered my office an hour before the scheduled meeting, reviewing the evidence one final time. Isabella's fabricated documents that had destroyed my reputation, the proof of her systematic dismantling of company safeguards, the correspondence with my father that revealed their collusion, most importantly, the refinancing agreement that would save Mercer Industries from immediate collapse, contingent on Isabella's complete confession and resignation. At precisely 9:53 a.m., my assistant announced her arrival. "Ms. Reyes is here. Mr. Harrington. She's 7 minutes early. Let her wait exactly 7 minutes, then show her in." The timing was deliberate, establishing the power dynamic without seeming petty. Isabella had once kept me waiting outside my father's office before delivering her accusations. The symmetry was important. At exactly 10 a.m., Isabella Reyes entered my office. She looked immaculate as always, though the strain of the past 72 hours showed in the tightness around her eyes. She carried herself with the practiced confidence of someone accustomed to controlling every room she entered. That confidence was about to shatter permanently. "Mr. Harrington," she began, extending her hand. "Thank you for seeing me on such short notice. I believe our discussion today could be mutually beneficial." I stood behind my desk, not accepting her handshake. "You need my signature to survive," I said calmly, "the same way I once needed your loyalty." Confusion flickered across her face, quickly replaced by calculation as she tried to process my statement. Then recognition dawned as she truly looked at me for the first time, seeing beyond the physical changes to the eyes that had once watched her betray me. "Alexander," she breathed, the professional mask slipping momentarily. I should have known. This market disruption seemed too targeted. "Not the disruption," I corrected her. "The preparation." "The market crashed naturally. I simply ensured you had nowhere to turn when it did." Isabella recovered quickly. Her intellect had always been her greatest weapon. She straightened her shoulders, recalibrating her approach. "Impressive. I underestimated your resilience, one of many miscalculations." I gestured for her to sit, then outlined methodically how I controlled every lifeline Mercer Industries might grasp. Supply chain alternatives, potential investors, refinancing options. 8 years of strategic positioning executed flawlessly. "What do you want?" she asked finally. "Revenge? Money? Control of the company?" "I want you to understand consequences," I replied, "something apparently missing from your education." For the first time, uncertainty flickered in Isabella's eyes. Not fear, but the dawning realization that she had severely misjudged the situation. The hunter had become the hunted, and the trap had closed silently around her while she remained oblivious to its existence. I pressed a button on my desk. "And I want witnesses to that understanding." The wall screen activated, revealing board members watching via secure video conference. Isabella's composed expression faltered momentarily before she reconstructed her professional mask. "Your board wanted to witness our negotiation directly," I explained. "I insisted on transparency." The final phase of my plan was now in motion. Isabella sat across from me, calculating options that no longer existed, while the very people who had once embraced her leadership prepared to witness her complete unraveling. I activated the displays around my office, systematically presenting evidence of Isabella's machinations, not just against me, but subsequent manipulations, ethical breaches, and questionable decisions hidden from the board. Each revelation built upon the last, constructing an irrefutable case. "This is the Singapore acquisition," I said, displaying financial documents. "Notice the artificially inflated valuation. And here, the subsequent write-down hidden in quarterly statements under strategic reassessment." Isabella sat perfectly, still, her eyes darting between the evidence and the board members on screen. I could see her mind calculating, searching for explanations or deflections. "These are complex financial structures," she began, "taken out of context. There is no context that justifies falsifying shareholder reports," I interrupted, advancing to the next exhibit. "Just as there was no justification for falsifying evidence against me 8 years ago." The board members' expressions had grown increasingly grim. Bradford Westfield, once her staunchest supporter, leaned toward his camera. "Is this accurate, Ms. Reyes? Did you deliberately misrepresent the Malaysian venture losses?" "The timing of disclosure was strategic," she said smoothly. "The market was volatile. Immediate transparency would have triggered a premature devaluation." "That decision wasn't brought to the board," another member noted coldly. I watched her attempt to regain control of the narrative, the skill that had served her so well for years. But the evidence was too comprehensive, too meticulously assembled. Each explanation she offered was met with another document contradicting her claims. "But the most interesting discovery," I continued, "came from my father's private files. I displayed correspondence between Isabella and Richard dating back before her arrival at Mercer Industries. You were never just a financial consultant, you were his test for me." Isabella's silence confirmed the truth. Richard Mercer, questioning his son's readiness to lead, arranged the ultimate test, a brilliant, beautiful woman with instructions to probe for weaknesses, test his judgment, evaluate his worthiness. "He expected me to see through you," I stated flatly. "When I failed, you both decided I was unworthy of my inheritance." The board members' expressions shifted from shock to disgust as they realized the depth of manipulation. "Your father wanted strength," Isabella said, finding her voice. "You showed weakness. The company needed better leadership." "And how has that leadership served Mercer Industries?" I asked, displaying their current financial predicament. For the first time, I saw real fear in Isabella's eyes, not for the company's fate, but for her own. The carefully constructed facade began to crack. The board members who had once embraced her vision now looked at her with dawning comprehension of how thoroughly they had been manipulated. I let the silence stretch, allowing the full weight of revelation to settle on everyone watching. Then I played my final card. "There are 2 paths forward," I said, addressing both Isabella and the board. "Harrington Ventures can provide immediate refinancing, preventing Mercer Industries' collapse. But there are conditions." "Name them," Westfield said grimly. "First, Isabella Reyes resigns from all positions and surrenders. All shares acquired during her tenure." Isabella's jaw tightened, but she remained silent. "Second, the board acknowledges publicly that the accusations against me 8 years ago were fabricated, clearing my name completely." Nods from several board members. "Third, Mercer Industries will be restructured under new leadership, with policies ensuring this kind of manipulation can never happen again." "These terms are acceptable to the board," Westfield confirmed after quick consultation with his colleagues. "Ms. Reyes no longer has our confidence." Isabella had been calculating throughout this exchange. I could almost see the scenarios running behind her eyes, seeking leverage, advantage, escape. Finding none, she shifted strategies. "I can fix this," she said, leaning forward. "I've overcome worse challenges." Her voice softened, becoming almost intimate. "Or we could work together, Alexander. Your strategic vision, my execution. We made a formidable team once. The attempt at manipulation was so transparent it was almost laughable. 8 years ago, I might have wavered. Now I simply slid a document across the table. Harrington Ventures can provide immediate refinancing in exchange for controlling interest. The terms are non-negotiable." Isabella studied the document, recognizing her complete capitulation but seeing no alternatives. "The board will never approve these terms." "They already have," I replied as board members nodded on screen. "Contingent on your resignation." She signed, her hand perfectly steady, calculating future recovery possibilities. "This isn't over, Alexander." "Actually, it is," I revealed. The document's final page. Her full confession to manipulating company records, conspiring with Richard Mercer, sabotaging my career, and subsequent ethical breaches as CEO. The signature she had just provided applied to all pages. "You just testified against yourself," I stated as the office door opened and regulatory authorities entered. "Corporate fraud carries significant penalties." Isabella's composure finally shattered as she realized the completeness of her defeat. Not just professional disgrace, but legal consequences. The carefully constructed empire she had built on deception was collapsing around her. "You can't do this," she whispered, looking at me with genuine fear now. "I built this company into what it is today." "You built a house of cards," I corrected. "And now the wind has come." As the authorities led her away, I addressed the board. "Gentlemen, ladies, I suggest we adjourn until tomorrow. By then, the refinancing will be in place and we can discuss Mercer Industries' future direction." The screens went dark. I stood alone in my office, the culmination of 8 years of planning unfolding exactly as I had envisioned, not with dramatic confrontation or emotional outbursts, but with the mechanical precision of justice, long delayed but finally delivered. My assistant entered quietly. "Sir, the press is already reporting Ms. Reyes's arrest. Financial analysts are requesting statements regarding Harrington Ventures' relationship with Mercer Industries moving forward. Prepare the standard acquisition announcement. Emphasize stability and continuity for clients and employees. And the personal angle? Your history with the company is bound to emerge." I considered this briefly. "Confirm my identity if asked. Directly. Otherwise, keep the focus on the future, not the past." The aftermath unfolded over subsequent days exactly as I had planned. Isabella's arrest played across financial news networks alongside announcements of Mercer Industries' restructuring. The markets responded positively to the leadership change and emergency funding from Harrington Ventures. What could have been a catastrophic collapse became a controlled transition. Marcus and Catherine joined me in my office a week later as the dust began to settle. "Congratulations," Marcus said, raising his glass in a toast. 8 years of planning executed flawlessly." "Isabella faces 15 years minimum," Catherine added. "The prosecution has an airtight case with her signed confession and the documentary evidence." I nodded, accepting their congratulations but feeling oddly hollow. The single-minded focus that had driven me for 8 years had achieved its purpose. Isabella was ruined. My name cleared. My family's company returned to my control. Yet the victory felt less satisfying than I had anticipated. "What comes next?" Catherine asked, sensing my mood. "Rebuilding," I replied. "Mercer Industries needs to become what it should have been all along." "And James Harrington?" Marcus inquired. "Does he simply vanish now that Alexander Mercer is vindicated?" I looked out over the city skyline, considering the question. The identity I had created was more than just a disguise. It represented a different approach to business and power than the one I had been raised to inherit. "No," I said finally. "James Harrington built something valuable. The integration will be more complex than simply reclaiming my old identity. I'm not the same person who was thrown out of Mercer Tower 8 years ago." That evolution became apparent as I walked into the Mercer Industries boardroom the following morning, the same one where Isabella had orchestrated my downfall. The board members rose as I entered, their deference a stark contrast to the last time I had stood before them. "Gentlemen, ladies," I began. "Mercer Industries was built on innovation and integrity. We lost our way through betrayal and deception. Today we return to our foundations, but with a new vision for the future. I outlined my plans for restructuring, emphasizing transparency and ethical governance. The board members, chastened by their complicity in Isabella's regime, approved each proposal unanimously. The final piece came when I moved into my father's former office. Workers removed his portrait as I watched impassively. "Your father would be proud," Catherine suggested, entering with quarterly projections. "My father created a test designed to destroy me," I replied without emotion. "I built something stronger from those ruins. The company is mine now, not his legacy, not Isabella's ambition. Mine." I stood at the window overlooking the city. The chess game concluded. Every move, calculated, every consequence accounted for. Not just revenge, but complete reinvention. The betrayal had been transformed into the foundation of something stronger, more resilient, entirely my own. In the end, Isabella had given me an unexpected gift. By tearing away everything I thought defined me, she had forced me to build myself anew. The company I now controlled was more powerful than it would have been had I simply inherited it as planned. My vision, clearer, my resolve unshakable. She had tried to destroy me. Instead, she had forged me into something far more formidable than I would have otherwise become. The ultimate irony of her betrayal was that it had created precisely what my father had wanted all along, a leader worthy of the Mercer name. 3 months after Isabella's arrest, I sat in the courtroom watching her final appearance before sentencing. She had made a desperate attempt to withdraw her confession, claiming coercion, but the evidence against her was overwhelming. The judge denied her motion, setting the stage for today's proceeding. Isabella entered in standard-issue prison attire, a far cry from the impeccable designer suits she once wore. When she spotted me in the gallery, her expression hardened. This was the moment I had orchestrated for 8 years, her complete and public humiliation. Your Honor, the prosecutor began, given the extensive nature of Ms. Reyes's financial crimes, the pattern of deliberate deception, and the significant harm to shareholders, we recommend the maximum sentence of 18 years. Her attorney made a perfunctory argument for leniency, but his words lacked conviction. Isabella had depleted her considerable resources on increasingly desperate legal maneuvers, each one failing as the evidence I had methodically compiled proved insurmountable. When the judge announced the 15-year sentence, Isabella turned to look directly at me. There was no remorse in her eyes, only cold rage and perhaps finally a reluctant respect. She understood now what I had become, someone more calculating and patient than she had ever anticipated. I left the courtroom without waiting to see her led away. That chapter was closed. My focus had already shifted to rebuilding Mercer Industries into something stronger than before. Back at headquarters, I convened the newly formed executive team. Marcus now served as CFO, bringing his ethical standards and financial acumen to restore integrity to our operations. Catherine headed an expanded R&D division, her innovative approaches already generating promising new technologies. The South Korean negotiation is complete, Marcus reported. They've accepted our terms for the semiconductor partnership. The technology integration timeline? I asked. 6 months, possibly less, Catherine responded. Their engineering team is already aligned with our protocols. I nodded, reviewing the projections. And the former Blackwood subsidiaries? Fully incorporated into our supply chain, another executive confirmed. The efficiency gains are exceeding initial estimates. The meeting continued with the streamlined precision that had become our hallmark. No posturing, no politics, just clear objectives and accountable execution. In 3 months, we had restructured operations that had taken Isabella years to distort. After the meeting, Catherine lingered. There's something you should see, she said, placing a file on my desk. We found it in the archived R&D server during the security audit. Inside was evidence that Isabella had suppressed promising technologies that didn't align with her personal agenda, innovations that could have transformed entire industries. She wasn't just building her empire, Catherine explained. She was deliberately constraining the company's potential to maintain control. I studied the documents, feeling a cold certainty that my actions had been even more justified than I had initially believed. Isabella hadn't merely stolen my position, she had systematically undermined the company's core purpose of innovation. Resurrect these projects immediately, I instructed. Prioritize the neural interface technology. That evening, I attended a charity gala, my first public appearance since reclaiming my identity. The whispers followed me through the ballroom, the financial elite of the city adjusting to my resurrection. Some approached with cautious congratulations, others maintained distance, uncertain where the new power dynamics would settle. Bradford Westfield, who had once voted for my removal, without hesitation, intercepted me near the bar. "Alexander," he began, his practiced smile not reaching his eyes. "Your return to Mercer has been nothing short of miraculous. The board is unanimously impressed with the direction you've taken." The same board that believed fabricated evidence against me without proper investigation, I noted mildly. He had the grace to look uncomfortable. We were deceived. Isabella presented compelling documentation. "And now I control 70% of company shares," I reminded him. "The upcoming board restructuring should be interesting." I left him, with that thought, a subtle reminder that consequences remained for those who had enabled Isabella's coup. My revenge wasn't limited to her alone. The next morning brought news that Isabella had been denied bail pending her appeal. The financial press had moved on from the scandal, now focusing on Mercer Industries' remarkable recovery and innovative new product lines. "Sir," my assistant announced, "there's a visitor claiming to be your cousin, Thomas Mercer." I frowned. The name was familiar, a distant relative who had never been involved in family business. "Send him in." Thomas entered cautiously, a nervous man in his 40s who bore a passing resemblance to my father. "Alexander," he began, "I know this is unexpected. We've never properly met. What can I do for you, Thomas?" He hesitated. "Before your father died, he contacted me. He said if anything happened to him, I should wait until it was safe, then deliver this to you." He placed a sealed envelope on my desk. After he left, I opened my father's final message. Inside was a handwritten letter, dated 2 days before his death. "Alexander, by now you will have learned the truth about Isabella. What you may not understand is why. When I saw your potential, I also saw weakness. An untested heir who had never faced true adversity. Isabella was my creation, my test for you. Not to destroy you, but to forge you into something stronger. If you are reading this, you have overcome. You have become what Mercer Industries truly needs, not an heir, but a conqueror. A leader who understands that trust must be earned, not given. A strategist who can anticipate betrayal and turn it to advantage. The company is rightfully yours, not by birth, but by the strength you have demonstrated in reclaiming it. With respect, Richard Mercer." I read the letter twice, then burned it methodically in the small fireplace in my office. My father's final manipulation changed nothing. The man who had arranged my destruction didn't deserve the satisfaction of having his grand design recognized, even posthumously. That afternoon, I visited Isabella in prison. She was brought to the visitors' area, surprise briefly visible before. Her mask of cool indifference returned. "Come to gloat?" she asked, taking the seat across from me. "I came to thank you," I replied calmly. Confusion flickered across her face. "For what?" "For teaching me what my father never could. That legacy is meaningless without the strength to protect it." Her eyes narrowed. "He told you then about our arrangement. It doesn't matter who planned it. What matters is who prevailed." She studied me with new understanding. "You're not the same man I betrayed." "No." I stood to leave. "That man died the day you took everything from him. I'm what emerged from those ashes." As I walked away, she called after me. "I underestimated you once. I won't make that mistake again." I turned back. "You won't have the opportunity." 1 year to the day after Isabella's conviction, I stood on the stage at the Global Technology Conference, presenting Mercer Industries' revolutionary neural interface. The product she had suppressed had been perfected under Catherine's leadership, positioned to transform medical treatment for paralysis victims. As the audience applauded the demonstration, I caught sight of Marcus at the back of the hall, giving me a subtle nod. The stock was reaching new heights. The company that had nearly collapsed under Isabella's leadership was now redefining entire industries. Later in my office, no longer my father's space but truly mine, I reviewed the latest acquisition proposals. The portrait wall now held images of innovation milestones rather than family patriarchs. The legacy continued, but on my terms, A news alert flashed on my screen. Isabella's appeal had been denied. The 15-year sentence stood. The notification merited only a moment's attention before I returned to building the future. The betrayal that had once defined me had become merely the foundation upon which I had constructed something far greater than revenge. Isabella had stolen my family fortune and laughed as I lost everything. Now she watched from a prison cell as I transformed that legacy into something beyond what either she or my father had ever imagined possible. 5 years passed since Isabella's sentencing. Mercer Industries had not merely recovered, it had evolved into something entirely new under my leadership. The neural interface technology had revolutionized medical treatment worldwide. Our expansion into sustainable energy had disrupted markets across 3 continents. The company value had quadrupled. I reviewed the quarterly projections with Marcus in my office, now a space that reflected my vision rather than my family's history. The European Commission has approved the merger, Marcus reported. The last regulatory hurdle is cleared. And Blackwood Corporation? Stock in free fall. Our acquisition offer expires at midnight. I nodded, satisfaction flowing through me. Blackwood, the company Isabella had conspired with to destroy my reputation, would soon be nothing more than a subsidiary of Mercer Industries. The symmetry was perfect. "Sir," my assistant interrupted via intercom, "there's a call from Millview Correctional. An inmate is requesting to speak with you." Isabella, after 5 years of silence. "Put it through," I said, gesturing for Marcus to stay. "Alexander." Her voice sounded thinner than I remembered, the practiced confidence eroded by years of confinement. "I need to see you." "Why would I agree to that?" A pause. "Because I have information about your father's contingency plans. Plans that could affect Mercer Industries' future." I exchanged glances with Marcus. My father had been dead for 13 years. What possible plans could still be relevant? "You have nothing I need, Isabella." "Check the original corporate charter," she replied. "Article 18, subsection C. Then decide if you want to hear what I know." She disconnected before I could respond. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Worth investigating?" "Find the charter," I instructed. "The original document, not the digital version." Hours later, I stood in the secure records room beneath Mercer Tower, examining faded pages from the company's founding. Article 18, subsection C contained an obscure provision. Upon the 50th anniversary of incorporation, all controlling shares would be subject to a supermajority vote of living Mercer descendants, regardless of current ownership structure. That anniversary was 3 months away. "Is this enforceable?" I asked the corporate counsel who had verified the provision's authenticity. "Potentially. It's never been tested in court, but the language is clear. If living Mercer descendants vote against the current leadership structure, control of the company could be challenged. I had no children. My father had no other legitimate children, but the Mercer family tree had branches I had never explored. Cousins, distant relatives, people who shared the name but had never been part of the company. People like Thomas, who had delivered my father's letter. "Find them," I instructed. "Every living person with Mercer blood, and arrange a visit to Millview Correctional." 2 days later, I sat across from Isabella in the prison visiting room. 5 years had aged her more than time alone should account for. The polished exterior was gone, replaced by institutional pallor and hardened wariness. "You found it," she stated, not a question. "How long have you known?" "Your father showed me the charter 13 years ago. It was part of our arrangement. He wanted to ensure the company would always be controlled by true Mercers." "And now you think this information has value?" She leaned forward. "I know exactly how many Mercer descendants exist, where they live, and what motivates each one." Richard was thorough in his contingency planning. "What do you want?" "A reduced sentence, help with my appeal, and a percentage of company shares, placed in a trust I can access upon release." I studied her carefully. The desperation was well masked but visible in the slight tension around her eyes. Prison had taught her patience but not humility. What's to stop me from finding these relatives myself? Some don't carry the Mercer name. Some don't know their true parentage. Richard buried these connections deliberately. I'm the only one with the complete picture. I stood to leave. I'll consider your offer. You have 3 months, Alexander. Tick-tock. I left without another word, but her information proved accurate. My team identified 11 potential Mercer descendants, but genealogical verification was proving difficult. Time was running short. After weeks of investigation, Marcus presented the findings. We've confirmed 7 legitimate Mercers, including Thomas. 4 remain uncertain. If all voted against you, they could trigger the supermajority provision. And their current dispositions? Mixed. Some are receptive to financial incentives. Others seem ideologically opposed to your leadership based on media portrayal of the Isabella situation. I considered the options. Buying loyalty was straightforward but potentially temporary. Legal challenges to the charter provision could take years. Establishing genuine relationships with distant relatives in 3 months was unlikely. Or I could hear what Isabella knew. I returned to Millview with a counter-proposal. No financial stake, no appeal support, but I can arrange transfer to a minimum security facility with better conditions. She weighed the offer visibly. Not enough. I need guarantees for my eventual release. You tried to destroy me, Isabella. The fact that I'm offering anything should tell you how serious this situation is. Our negotiation continued over 3 meetings, finally reaching terms. We both could accept. She would provide complete information on all Mercer descendants and their private histories. In exchange, I would use my influence to improve her conditions and support parole consideration at her earliest eligibility date. Still 7 years away. The information she provided proved invaluable. 2 Mercers I hadn't identified. Specific leverage points for each family member. One cousin had a child with severe medical needs that our neural interface technology could help. Another had environmental concerns that aligned with our sustainable energy division. Over the next 2 months, I met personally with each Mercer descendant. Not with threats or bribes, but with genuine opportunities to participate in the company's future. Advisory roles, charitable foundations aligned with their interests, educational trusts for their children. When the 50th anniversary arrived, the vote was unanimous in favor of maintaining current leadership. The potential crisis had been converted into a strengthening of family connections. I visited Isabella one final time after the vote. You kept your word, she acknowledged. Surprising. Unlike you, I understand the value of integrity. She smiled thinly. You came to thank me again then, for making you the man you are today. No, I came to inform you that your transfer has been approved, and to give you this. I placed a document on the table between us. What is it? A consultancy agreement. Once you're eligible for work release, Mercer Industries will hire you as a strategic advisor. Your insights are valuable even if your methods were unconscionable. She stared at me, genuinely surprised for perhaps the first time in our long history. Why would you trust me again? I don't, but I've learned that enemies can be more useful than friends when properly managed. You taught me that. Back at Mercer Tower, I stood in my office looking out over the city. The company that had nearly been stolen from me was now secure, stronger than ever, its future extending far beyond what my father or Isabella had envisioned. The Blackwood acquisition is complete, Marcus announced, entering with the final documents. And the new Mercer Family Council had its first successful meeting yesterday. I signed the papers, completing the circle. Blackwood Corporation, once the instrument of my downfall, now existed only as a footnote in Mercer Industries' expanding portfolio. Shall I have your father's portrait returned to the boardroom? Marcus asked. Some of the family members expressed interest in restoring certain traditions. I considered the question. No, the company isn't about the past anymore. It's about what we're building for the future. The portrait remained in storage, a reminder of lessons learned but not a guide for what came next. Isabella remained in prison, her brilliant mind now an asset I controlled rather than a threat. And I remained at the helm of an empire I had lost and reclaimed, transformed through that very loss into something far more powerful than simple inheritance could have created. She stole my family fortune and laughed as I lost everything. Now I held her future in my hands, along with a legacy built not on birthright but on the strength forged through betrayal and restored through calculated justice.